The world was a place of soft whispers and gentle clinks. It was a world of porcelain and polish, of steam and sweetness. This was the silent tea party at the world's end, a place where the tables were always set and the sun always hung low and golden, like a giant lump of honey in the sky. And on one of these tables, in the very center of it all, sat a little teacup. She was a beautiful teacup, there was no doubt about it. Her porcelain was painted with the most delicate swirls of cornflower blue and the palest pink, like a forgotten sunset. She felt proud and straight on her saucer, ready for the day a wonderful fragrant tea would be poured into her waiting bowl. But the little teacup had a secret, a tiny hairline crack that ran from her rim all the way down to her base. It was so fine you might not see it unless the light hit it just right, but the teacup knew it was there. She felt it every moment of every day. When the other cups chatted with the gentle clinking of their handles, she remained quiet, worried that her own voice would be a flawed, rattling sound. She believed deep in her porcelain heart that she was broken, that she was not good enough for the finest tea. She would watch the other perfect cups being filled with steaming amber liquid, their handles held daintily by invisible, polite hands. She would see the sugar cubes dance with a soft plink into their depths and hear the silent stir of a spoon. But for her, there was only emptiness. She believed her tiny crack would surely let the precious tea leak out, creating a messy puddle and causing great disappointment. So she sat, day after golden day, feeling a deep sadness that was colder than any tea. One afternoon, as the honey sun glowed especially bright, a great and important event was announced. The Grand Tea Taster was coming for a visit. A ripple of excited clinking passed through all the teapots and cups and saucers. The Grand Tea Taster was the most respected of all, known for choosing only the most perfect, most flawless vessels for the most exquisite and rare teas. The little teacup's heart, or the place where a teacup's heart would be, sank. She knew she would never be chosen. She tried to sit even straighter, to tilt herself so the light would not catch her tiny crack. But she felt it there, a whisper of imperfection against her smooth side. Soon the Grand Tea Taster arrived. It was not a person, you understand, but a feeling, a presence that moved along the long table, inspecting each piece of fine china. The little teacup felt the presence pause before her. She held her breath, hoping against hope. But the presence simply moved on, selecting a tall, spotless cup with golden edges and a wide, perfect cup with no handle at all. The little teacup felt a sadness so deep it seemed to make her tiny crack ache. But then something unexpected happened. The Grand Tea Taster, in its wise and ancient way, had not come just to choose cups for tea. It had come to choose a cup for a very special, very important job. A journey. The chosen cup, the tall one with golden edges, was to be filled with Starlight Tea, a brew so delicate it could only be sipped under the first evening star. But there was a problem, a very big problem. The path to the Starlight sipping meadow was long and treacherous. It wound through the swaying grasses of forgetfulness, where the whispers could make you lose your way. It passed by the rumbling slopes of the Sugar Cube Mountain, where loose pebbles could cause a terrible stumble. And it ended at the quiet shore of the Milk and Honey Pond. The journey required a vessel that was not just beautiful, but also special in a way no one could quite predict. The Grand Tea Taster's presence settled over the table again, and this time it stopped right in front of our little teacup. A feeling of warmth, not of hot tea, but of gentle understanding, washed over her. The presence had seen her tiny crack, and it had chosen her. The little teacup could hardly believe it. She was filled with a nervous excitement that made her feel like she was vibrating. A small amount of the precious Starlight tea was poured into her. It was not hot but cool, and it shimmered with 1,000 tiny twinkling lights like liquid starlight. It felt magical. Her mission was clear. She had to carry the Starlight tea safely across the silent tea party to the Starlight sipping meadow without spilling a single twinkling drop. The other cups looked on, some with encouragement, some with doubt. Could a cup with a crack, however tiny, really manage such an important task? And so the little teacup's journey began. She felt herself being gently lifted from her saucer. It was a strange and wonderful feeling to be moving, to be going on an adventure. The world outside her familiar spot on the table was vast and full of new sensations. The first part of her path led through the swaying grasses of forgetfulness. These were not ordinary grasses. They were tall and silver, and they whispered as they swayed in the gentle breeze. Can you hear the whispering grasses? They go shh, like they are telling a secret over and over again. The little teacup felt the whispers try to sneak into her thoughts to make her forget her important mission. Why are you carrying tea? They seemed to whisper. You should go back. You are not a perfect cup. The little teacup felt a flicker of her old doubt. Maybe the grasses were right. Maybe this was a mistake. But just as she started to feel unsure, a strong gust of wind blew through the grasses, making them sway violently. The teacup was jostled. She tipped to one side, and a single, shimmering drop of the Starlight Tea welled up on her rim right near the top of her tiny crack. She was sure she would lose it. She was sure her imperfection would cause the first failure. But then something amazing happened. The tiny drop of Starlight Tea did not drip through the crack. Instead, it clung to the very edge of it. The little crack, it seemed, created a tiny holding point. The drop quivered, glowing brightly, but it did not fall. The teacup carefully righted herself, and the drop slid safely back into the shimmering pool inside her. She had not lost a single drop. Her crack, for just a moment, had helped. She felt a tiny spark of something new. Was it confidence? She pressed on, the whispering of the grasses growing fainter behind her. No longer scary, but just a soft background sound. Shh. Next, her path took her along the base of the great rumbling sugar cube mountain. The mountain was enormous, made of sparkling white sugar cubes, and little sugary pebbles often tumbled down its side with a sound like 1,000 tiny bells rolling together. Tinkle, tinkle, tumble. Can you make a tinkling sound with your tongue? It was a beautiful but dangerous sound. The little teacup had to be very careful navigating the pebbly path. She moved slowly, deliberately. But then a larger chunk of sugar broke loose from high above and came bouncing down the mountain directly toward her. It was a sugary avalanche. The little teacup braced herself. There was nowhere to run. The chunk of sugar cube bounced and landed with a soft thump right against her side, right where her tiny crack was. The impact was jarring. It didn't break her, but it sent a shock through her fine porcelain. The Starlight Tea inside her sloshed and swirled, its twinkling lights spinning wildly. The liquid rose high up her sides, threatening to spill over her rim. It rushed toward the crack. This was it. This was surely the end. The crack would give way, and all the precious tea would pour out. But again, the unexpected happened. The crack did not split open. Instead, as the tea rushed against the fine hairline fracture, it created a tiny, gentle resistance. It slowed the swirling motion of the tea just enough. The wave of starlight receded, settling back into a calm, shimmering pool. The crack had acted like a tiny buffer, absorbing the shock of the wave and calming the storm inside her. She was safe. The tea was safe. For the second time, her imperfection had not been a weakness, but a strange kind of strength. That spark of confidence inside her grew a little brighter. The path began to slope downward now, and the air started to smell different. It smelled sweet and creamy and floral. It smelled of milk and honey and flowers. She was getting close. The little teacup felt a surge of excitement. She could see the milk and honey pond up ahead, its surface as still and smooth as a mirror, reflecting the forever honey sun. And beside it was the starlight sipping meadow, a soft velvety patch of purple clover. But between her and the meadow was one last challenge. A wide, burbling stream cut across the path. This was not water, oh no. This was the Lemonade Brook, and its currents were fizzier and more unpredictable than any water. It bubbled and popped with a tangy, energetic sound. There was no bridge. The only way across was over a single, slick, mossy stone that sat right in the center of the brook. The little teacup would have to be lifted and placed perfectly on that stone, and then lifted again to the other side. It was a test of steady hands and a calm heart. As she was carried over the fizzing, popping brook, she looked down. The lemonade bubbled and frothed, and she saw her own reflection for the first time since her journey began. She saw her beautiful blue and pink swirls. She saw the Starlight Tea glowing within her, and she saw her tiny crack, no longer a dark line of shame, but a thin, shimmering thread of light traced by the magical tea. It was a part of her. It was her. She was placed gently onto the slick, mossy stone. For a moment, she was perfectly balanced. But then a giant bubble rose from the depths of the lemonade brook and burst right next to the stone with a loud pop. The sudden noise and spray caused a tiny jolt. The little teacup wobbled. She wobbled dangerously to one side. This was not a violent jolt like the sugar cube, but a slow, teetering, tipping wobble. She was going to fall. She was going to tip over and pour every last drop of the precious Starlight Tea into the fizzing lemonade below. All her journey, all her challenges would be for nothing. She felt a moment of pure panic, but then she remembered. She remembered the whispering grasses and how her crack held a drop. She remembered the sugar cube avalanche and how her crack calmed the storm. She was not a perfect cup. She was a brave cup, a journey-taking cup, a cup with a tiny crack that had helped her again and again. Instead of fighting the wobble, she embraced it. She let her weight settle, letting her unique, slightly imperfect base find a new balance on the uneven, mossy stone. She tilted, and for a heart-stopping second it seemed she would go too far. But then she stopped. She found her point of balance. She was tilted, yes, but she was steady. Not a single drop of Starlight Tea had spilled. Her imperfection had allowed her to find a balance that a so-called perfect cup might never have found. She had used her flaw to save the day. She was lifted from the stone and carried the final few steps to the starlight sipping meadow. She was placed gently upon a bed of soft purple clover. Above, the first evening star blinked into existence, bright and clear. As the star's light touched her, the Starlight Tea inside her began to glow even brighter, shining with a soft, silvery light that lit up the entire meadow. The light poured from her rim, and yes, it also poured from her tiny crack, creating not a leak, but a beautiful, shimmering beam of light that danced on the clover leaves. Her crack was not a flaw. It was a unique feature that made the light show even more spectacular. She had done it. She had delivered the tea perfectly, or rather, perfectly imperfectly. A deep feeling of warmth and happiness filled the little teacup. She wasn't just happy because she had completed her mission. She was happy because she finally understood. Her crack didn't make her broken. It made her, her. It was her story. It was what made her able to hold on to a drop of tea in the wind, to calm a swirling wave, and to find balance on a wobbly stone. She was not less valuable because of her crack. She was more valuable because of it. From that day on, the little teacup was never without purpose. She was never left empty on the table. She became the chosen cup for all the most interesting and important journeys. Sometimes she carried teas that needed to be cooled just a little by the air that whispered through her crack. Sometimes she carried teas that glowed and needed her special light beam feature. She was known throughout the silent tea party, not as the cracked cup, but as the brave journeying cup, the one with the shimmering thread of light, the one who was perfectly herself. And every time she felt a tiny whisper of doubt, she remembered her great adventure and she held herself tall, proud of every single part of herself, especially her tiny, wonderful, valuable crack. What do you think we will learn about in our next adventure? Will we learn about shapes that don't fit in? Or maybe about feelings that feel too big? Join us next time to find out. Moral core: our perceived flaws and differences are often the very things that make us special, strong, and uniquely equipped to help the world.